give a quick welcome to our author and illustrator we have today, Will Hillenbrand. Will, take it away.
Okay. Thank you, Leah. This is Will Hillenbrand from my studio, and I'm happy to be with all of you to be able to show you some of the things that I do when I make a book and to read some stories to you. First of all, I'd like to be able to say I'm dedicating this program to some students that are in a classroom called Room 6. For those students, you already know who you are. And one of the reasons I'm doing that is that the draw and tell stories and the draw and tell story that you'll be seeing in the middle of this program will be just for you. Now, and you probably have seen it before, so I hope that's okay. Tonight I'm going to read two stories, and they're both going to have bears in them. So the very first book that I'll be talking about will be First Star, and the next book will be Sleep, Big Bear Sleep. And because this is a story time, I've also brought along my big bear, which was given to me when my big bear was bigger than me. So um, the way I'm going to do the program is that you'll see a little bit behind the scenes of how I make a book, but beyond that, you will also see that the books will, at one point or another, both these books rotate. And as I read the story, I won't be reading from these physical books. You'll be seeing it on your screen. And the reason I'm doing that is that I want you to see the pictures really, really, really well because after all, I worked on making them as good as I can for you. So without any further ado, the way the structure will work is I'll tell you the story of First Star, then I'll tell you how I made it. We'll do a draw and tell story in the middle, and then after that, I'll come back and do Sleep, Big Bear Sleep, and I'll tell you about that book first, and then I'll read it. And then I think we'll be pretty close to being finished with our time. So I'm going to switch to my presentation here. And actually, I need to go back just a little bit. I queued up a little too early. So we'll go to my first slide, which welcomes you to my studio. And I'm happy to be with you. And so we'll go on. The most important thing to me when I do a book, and most important thing for me overall, is keeping a journal. So here is one of my journals, and inside my journal, I put my name and my email address in case I lose my journal. But this is my playground when it's my playground every day. I sometimes write, or I will almost always draw. I draw every single day. And in some cases, I'll put a post-it note on my journal page if I forgot to put the drawing in there that I wanted to do. Sometimes I use these drawings for my books, but not always. It doesn't make any difference. So I'd like to encourage all the readers out there to keep a journal because it's the way that we can think about what we're doing. And when we draw it or write about it, we think about it in a different way. We're Teflon people, and if we don't write it down, it just slides right off. We think we'll remember, but we usually don't. So keeping a journal is essential to me. And of course, I think about it as play. So I play through these drawings and page after page. And what tools do I need? I need a piece of paper, a pencil. I usually like using a fountain pen because when the pages touch one another, the pencil drawings often smear. So if I draw in ink, that won't happen. And then, of course, ultimately, I do my pictures digitally. I use my magic pencil, which for me is my Apple Pencil. But first of all, without further ado, I'd like to welcome you to my studio because this story time is happening right here where I make my books. And so it's a very small space. To give you a complete tour, we're just going to jump into this. And I'm going to say, welcome to my studio today. You can see my small studio. This is where the picture books happen. Welcome to my small studio. It's not very big, and that's me without my glasses. Master of illustration, that's debatable, and storytelling. See my magic pencil. I've had it for a while. See a hand with a pen. And that's doing when I do my writing, that's chicken scratch. So where do story ideas come from? For me, the answer is simple. Images always come first, or drawings always come first. And I believe in the process, drawing and redrawing. And welcome to my studio. And going a little bit further, we're going to go to the front cover of the first book I'm going to read to you tonight, which is called First Star. First Star is a book that's a part of a series, it's a bear and mole story, and it's the fifth story in the bear and mole series. In this book, we've got the bear and the mole. And the mole has a fear. Mole is very small. But even when small moles or small people have fears, it's not a small fear. And the fear that mole has, he's afraid of the dark. And in this book, we'll find out how a story turns that around for him. He has a lantern with him, and he's holding it. It even has a star on it. He wonders about what happens when it gets dark. It's hard to see. And in this case, you can see Mole coming out from under his blanket, which is a tent for him. I used to make one of those when I was a kid. I've also dedicated this book to some special friends. A week ago, Dean Regas did the story time, and tonight I'm taking his seat and doing it here in my studio. But I dedicated this book to Dean Regas and my friends at the Cincinnati Observatory. It's a wonderful place, and those friends there help us to keep looking up. So, Dean, thank you for that. And now for the story. Mole gazed up. May we sleep under the sky tonight? Asked Mole. I want to see the stars turn on. We can hike to Camp Tip Top, said Bear. Bear rolled. Mole stuffed. They put on their packs. Mole climbed up, up, up. Bear picked. Yum, yum, yum. Together they clambered. Then they made camp. Will it be getting dark soon? Asked Mole. Not for a while, replied Bear. I don't want to get lost in the dark, whimpered Mole. Let's go back home. I'll tell you the story of First Star, said Bear. It will tell you how to find your way. Long ago, first Father Bear, first Mother Bear, and first Baby Bear lived here. They played, they bathed, they ate lots of berries, just like all bears. But they worried. The night was always very, very dark. They could not see. So, first Little Bear helped his mother dig up white clay. They shaped it into a ball. The ball was Moon. Moon shone brightly. Look, Bear, I see a funny face on Moon, called Mole. Then first Little Bear scattered white stones into the darkness. They became stars. Bear, look, I see white stones. I mean stars, chuckled Mole. After that, first Father Bear reached up high. He pushed hard, hard, hard on one star. This star will not move, he said. It will always point north. We will never be lost in the dark. He named it First Star. First Father Bear made a star picture of First Little Bear. First Star became his tail. I see his tail, Mole giggled. Dark is not so dark if you know where you are, Bear said, smiling. What is that? Marveled Mole. It's flying across the sky. It's your lucky star, said Bear. Now make a wish. And maybe you'll make a wish when the stars turn on. And now I'm going to go through some pictures here. This is my sketchbook when I first started drawing First Father Bear. That was the first picture I worked on in the book. And I drew it over and over again to get the posture of the bear just right. And then I drew him, of course, in black and white, and then in color. And it's this picture that you will find in the book. And what is the bear doing? He's pushing hard, hard, hard on that star. This book actually has two stories in it. I blend them together. The first story is the bear and mole story, and the second story is the first bear family story. I blend them together to become one book and one story, and it's all connected to looking up and the stars at night, to a book my son fell in love with when he was a child, The Mole Family Christmas by Russell and Lillian Hoban. Of course, we loved looking at the pictures, and he's a geologist, so he's digging in the earth, but he still loves looking at the stars. And when he got older, we made rockets and went to the observatory. That's how we got to meet Dean. And still, Ian loves looking at the stars, and so do I. Last week, Dean said something about making your own star picture, and I did this when I made Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star for an illustrated book. The star constellation I made was the diamond in the sky. And there is a star picture of Little Bear here. The bears were worried about it getting dark at night. And now I'm going to move ahead so that we can get to the draw and tell story. And you can hear the story. I'm going to switch it back so that Leah can tell us this story and you can hear it. And then I'll come back and do the next story after this. Trapezoid and Parallelogram, a draw and tell story by Richard Thompson, read and drawn by Will Hillenbrand. And now for the story. This is Trapezoid, a rectangular solid from the planet Geo. Trapezoid was captain of an interstellar exploration vehicle, Critical Angle, and his mission was to search the universe for other forms of intelligent life. One day, as he was sitting at the viewport of the ship, he spotted a barren asteroid. He didn't think there was much hope that such a dry bit of rock could have life on it. But he deployed his remote sensors anyway. And he activated the supercomputer's search function. Much to his surprise, the computer began to blink and whirl frantically, indicating it had found signs of life. Trapezoid hopped on his one huge foot to where his friend Parallelogram had been resting in hypersleep for the last 500 years. They rushed to the viewport and looked as the ship approached the asteroid. The supercomputer whirled to life and printed out analysis of the data it had collected. The alien life form lived in a rectangular structure, the computer said, that was divided into spaces for sleeping and working. At one end, there were smaller rooms that were used to store supplies and 2 glass enclosed rooms where the alien grew plants, presumably to eat. Trapezoid piloted the ship to a smooth landing right next to the rectangular structure. Almost immediately, a wheeled vehicle emerged from a door in the side of the rectangular structure. It circled and stopped here. One of the vehicle doors swung open. A creature in a gleaming white skin stepped out of the vehicle and raised one arm in greeting. "What do you think it is?" said Parallelogram. "I have no idea," said Trapezoid, "but it is very, very strange." What kind of creature do you think it was? And now for the story map. And here is my hand-drawn sketch, my own story map. I used 2 pencils to make my map. The red one always indicates the new part of the story. I hope you enjoyed this draw and tell story. Keep drawing and telling stories, and keep looking up.
Okay, folks. Thanks so much for joining us for that. We're actually going to toss it right back to Will, and he's going to do another story for us. Take it away, Will.
Well, thank you, Leah, and welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that story of being out in space with, using your imagination and looking up. And now I'd like to take you behind the scenes and tell you a little bit more about Sleep, Big Bear Sleep, the second book. And in this case, I am not the author of the book, but I am the author of the pictures. Maureen Wright wrote the words. And so this is what I receive when I get a story to illustrate. There aren't any pictures here. I actually don't need any, but I do need pictures when I want to read a picture book because picture books are best with pictures. And for me, they start off often, like in this case, doing a character study. What does the main character look like? In this case, I have the bear wearing a Hawaiian shirt because I thought maybe he never wanted summer to end. But he didn't seem quite right, so I went to my journal and I kept drawing. Now, I like this bear a lot, and let's look at him more carefully. To me, he is a good bear, but he looks a little bit more like Bigfoot or Sasquatch than Big Bear. So if I do a book like that sometime, I'm going to keep this bear and bring him back. But he didn't seem quite right because for a book, looks do count. That means how do you portray the character? Are they funny or sad? Do they have clothes? Are they messy or neat? Those are some of the questions I think about. And I think best by drawing, because that's how an artist sees. It's not just thinking about a drawing. That's important, of course, but actually drawing it is most important. And here I've drawn the full figure of the bear. I liked parts of it, and I drew it again here. And this is drawn on vellum, and I've drawn the bear and his face several times. I've drawn his muzzle, which is his nose, as this kind of flattened O, but I'm not going to, you're not going to see the shape of that, but because I'm going to make it into a whole shape instead of a contour. And this is the picture of the bear. Now, I liked it quite a bit. And in this case, I've scanned in the drawing. I'll add color to the fur and then to the body. I added a darker color to the arms and legs so that there's more contrast, so that when you see the bear making a motion, you can see that all better in the story at a distance. Of course, I added a blue sky, a dark sky, so you can see what it looks like when it gets dark, because this story will take place from the day to the night. And now I'm going to read the story, Sleep, Big Bear, Sleep. But you might have noticed on this cover, as I've drawn that lettering, of course, I did do that, but more importantly than that, you see someone else besides the bear. You see the rabbit. Now, when I read the story, you won't hear one word about the rabbit because I added that character as a sidekick for our bear. And actually, here is that drawing of the bear that I did the sample character sketch of. Sleep, Big Bear, Sleep by Maureen Wright, illustrated by the person that's talking right now. This is the landscape. The dedication page is right here, but the copyright information. But what do we see in this setting? A village, some woods, and the great outdoors. You may even see more if you look carefully. And off in the distance, well, that might be a bear. I dedicated this book to Darwin Henderson, who shows that the way to succeed is to never quit. I love that idea, and he was an example of just that to me. And now for the story. Old Man Winter from a storm cloud spied his big bear friend in the countryside. He leaned to the earth and softly sighed, "Sleep, Big Bear, sleep." But Big Bear didn't hear very well. He couldn't sleep in his den in the dell. He thought he heard as twilight fell, "Drive a jeep, Big Bear, drive a jeep." So Big Bear yawned as he drove around in a jeep on a road just south of town. But after a while he stopped in a park. An old man Winter whispered as it grew dark, "Sleep, Big Bear, sleep." But Big Bear didn't hear very well. He couldn't sleep in his den in the dell. He thought he heard as dry leaves fell, "Sweep, Big Bear, sweep." So Big Bear went to a house down the street, and he swept each room so nice and neat. But after a while he yawned again, and Old Man Winter warned his friend, "Sleep, Big Bear, sleep." But Big Bear didn't hear very well. He couldn't sleep in his den in the dell. He thought he heard as shadows fell, "Leap, Big Bear, leap." So Big Bear found a frog he knew and played leap frog while the cold wind blew. Till all at once he fell to the ground. The wind through the trees was the only sound, and Old Man Winter said with a frown, "Sleep, Big Bear, sleep." But Big Bear didn't hear very well. He couldn't sleep in his den in the dell. He thought he heard as darkness fell, "Dive deep, Big Bear, dive deep." So Big Bear padded to a clear blue lake, finding it hard to stay awake. He dove in deep and swam to the shore. He had never been so tired before. His head drooped down and he let out a snore. And Old Man Winter said once more, "Sleep, Big Bear, sleep." But Big Bear didn't hear very well. He couldn't sleep in his den in the dell. He thought he heard as snowflakes fell, "Climb a mountain steep, Big Bear, steep." So Big Bear trudged to the mountain top where the cold wind blew and the temperature dropped. He sat on a stump on the highest spot and wished for a blanket and a fold up cot. Then he stumbled back down with his eyes half shut, so tired he didn't know which end was up. Old Man yelled while shaking his head, "Hey there, Bear, didn't you hear what I said? It's winter time, now go to bed." Big Bear's eyes were droopy and red. "You could have told me before," he said. He lumbered nearby to his cozy den. He rubbed his eyes and yawned again. He put on his PJs and blew out the light, and fluffing his pillow, he said, "Good night." And there he is with his very own teddy bear. Now, to wrap it up, I'll just show you a little sketch of when I worked on Big Bear. And while you watch that, I want to thank you for joining me for this very special story time. My library was the Northern Hills branch here in Cincinnati when I was a kid. It was my second home, and stories have always been a good place called home for me. And I hope tonight you have also felt that too, because a good story well told, well, I don't know. If there's something better than that, let me know. But I loved it when I was a kid, and I've loved it so much, I've never stopped loving it. And here, of course, is that bear. One of the erasers I use is often Scotch tape. And when I work on vellum, it doesn't pull up the paper, it just takes away the line. So if I'm making a change on my drawing, that's the way I go about doing what I do. And now I'm going to switch it to my very last slide because now it's your turn. I want to say thank you for being a great audience. Now it's your turn. What is in your story hat? Pick up your magic pencil, be creative, and have fun. Paint pictures with words. Set the stage. Things are not untrue just because they never happened. Sharpen your magic pencil. What is the story only you can tell? You have heard my stories tonight, but the world is waiting to hear yours. But maybe it might be better to say goodnight and work on that tomorrow because this is a good night story time. I want to thank you for joining me. And now, Leah, I'm going to turn it back to you and say thank you to all and have a good night.
Thank you to everybody for joining us. Have a good night. Sleep tight.